Welcome to the Daily Report. Please like and subscribe for more awesome updates.
Something massive just dropped, and it changes everything we thought we knew about Blake Lively. After months of speculation, her confidential contract has finally been unsealed, and what's inside is beyond shocking. We're not talking rumors. We're talking proof, hard evidence that flips the entire case upside down. The clauses, the lies, the loopholes, everything she accused others of? Her own contract may show she agreed to it all. From hidden arbitration deals to explosive non-disclosure terms, this isn't the story her team wanted the world to see. Because when you look at the fine print, it's not just a contract, it's a confession. Let's break it down clause by clause, secret by secret, and expose the truth behind one of Hollywood's biggest scandals. You're not going to believe what's just come to light. The contract has finally been unsealed, and what's inside could completely destroy Blake Lively's case. This isn't just another Hollywood headline, this is a game changer. The newly revealed actor agreement, originally drafted in May 2023, exposes everything. Blake Lively officially signed off on her 17-point agreement that November. Now, even though the exact document we're looking at isn't signed, it's part of that same 17-point deal, meaning every word in it is enforceable. Both sides acknowledged this in open court. Wayfair handed it over to the judge, and from that moment, the entire situation flipped upside down. Under this contract, Blake Lively legally agreed that she cannot sue Justin Baldoni, Wayfair, or anyone connected to the project. Instead, she agreed to handle any disputes through arbitration, a private process outside of court. And that's not all. While some of the terms seem standard for Hollywood contracts, others are downright shocking. For instance, it required Justin to have specific conversations with Blake about any scenes involving nudity or intimacy. He had to get her consent beforehand and discuss choreography details. These weren't just polite conversations, they were mandatory under her own contract. But here's where it gets even wilder. The parts of this agreement that might completely unravel her lawsuit haven't even been discussed yet. Because what's buried deeper in this contract doesn't just weaken her case, it might prove that Blake Lively herself violated it. And that's where everything starts to crumble. You might think that without a signature, this contract means nothing, but that's where the twist hits hardest. One of the biggest questions people are asking is, if the contract wasn't signed, can it even hold up? And the answer is absolutely yes. Here's why. By November 15th, 2023, Blake sent over a new document, an amendment that outlined additional protections she wanted. It specifically referenced her original actor's agreement from May 2023. In plain English, she acknowledged that the first contract existed, that it was active, and that this amendment was being added to it after the Hollywood labor strikes. So, she didn't just recognize it, she reinforced it. That means, legally, she was still bound to everything in that original contract. Now, here's the real kicker. This November amendment didn't mention compensation at all. So, if Blake wanted to get paid or receive any of her bonuses, she had to accept the terms of that actor's agreement. And guess what? She was paid. She accepted the money. She finished the project. That, in legal terms, equals full acceptance, signature or not. And that's where her entire argument starts falling apart. Because once you cash the check, you can't claim you never agreed to the deal. But it doesn't stop there. Now, here's the real kicker. This November amendment didn't mention compensation at all. So if Blake wanted to get paid or receive any of her bonuses, she had to accept the terms of that actor's agreement. And guess what? She was paid. She accepted the money. She finished the project. That, in legal terms, equals full acceptance, signature or not. And that's where her entire argument starts falling apart. Because once you cash the check, you can't claim you never agreed to the deal. But it doesn't stop there. Her contract didn't just handle pay, it covered everything from safety rules to insurance, and even COVID protocols. And what's hidden in those COVID clauses? It completely destroys one of Blake's biggest accusations against the production, and it's about to get messy. Blake Lively claimed the production had no COVID protocols. But what if her own contract proves otherwise? In her lawsuit, Blake accused the team, specifically Justin Baldoni and others, of putting her at risk by failing to follow COVID safety rules. She said there were no protocols, no protection, and that she and her infant son got sick because of their negligence. But here's the bombshell: her own contract directly contradicts that. The agreement explicitly references COVID several times. It even includes an attached document, the COVID safety protocols and regulations acknowledgement, that Blake was required to sign off on. It clearly states that she received the safety protocols, agreed to follow them, and promised to comply with all written health guidelines, including completing daily health checks before coming to set. And it doesn't stop there. The contract goes on to say that repeated failure to follow those safety rules could be considered a breach of her agreement, meaning she could be the one in violation. The document even clarifies that the production's COVID regulations were approved by SAG, the actors' union, and were aligned with official government standards. In short, the protocols were there, they were approved, and she agreed to follow them. Yet, despite all this, Blake claimed in her lawsuit that there was no insurance coverage for COVID and that Wayfair deliberately hid her exposure from her. But again, the paperwork tells a different story. Under Exhibit A, the standard conditions section of her contract, it specifically confirms that the company maintained insurance, including life, health, accident, and even cast insurance. They had every form of coverage necessary to protect their interests. Blake knew this. It's right there in her own contract. So, if the production did have safety protocols and they did have insurance, why would Blake lie about it? The answer might have less to do with safety and everything to do with control. What if I told you Blake Lively legally agreed she could never sue Wayfair or anyone else involved, no matter what happened? Rephrased transcript, humanized. Here's where things take a shocking legal turn. Buried deep inside her contract is a section labeled Legal Proceedings and Arbitration. And once you read it, it's game over. According to that clause, any and all disputes, and I mean every single one, whether related to the film or not, must be resolved through binding arbitration. That means no courtrooms, no jury, no public trial. Everything happens behind closed doors. The rules are crystal clear. The arbitration has to take place in Los Angeles before a neutral attorney or retired judge with at least 10 years of experience in the film industry. The fees are shared equally by both sides, and any decision made by that arbitrator is final. Once it's done, it's done. Even more shocking? The entire process is confidential. No one is allowed to gossip, speculate, or post online about any part of the arbitration, not by email, not in interviews, not even in a tweet. Breaking that rule could mean serious legal consequences. Now, you might think, wait, doesn't federal law protect against forced arbitration in cases of sexual harassment or assault? And yes, in 2022, a law was passed called the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act. But here's the catch: it only applies to those specific claims, and only if the person bringing them is an employee. And here's the twist that changes everything. Blake Lively's contract clearly shows she wasn't employed by Wayfair Studios at all. The entire agreement is between her company, Blakely Incorporated, and it ends with Us Movie LLC. Wayfair isn't even named anywhere in the contract. So legally, Blake can't bring defamation, breach of contract, or privacy claims against Wayfair or anyone else connected. She agreed in writing to settle all of that through arbitration. And since Wayfair wasn't even her employer, that 2022 law doesn't apply to her. But that's not the only bomb hidden in her deal. Wait until you hear what her contract doesn't give her, the very thing she's been claiming all along. Blake Lively claimed she led the edit, oversaw the film, and held producer power. But when you read the contract, none of that is true. In her lawsuit and public statements, Blake said she was deeply involved in post-production, even claiming she helped lead Sony's final cut of It Ends With Us. She positioned herself as the creative force steering the ship. But her contract tells a very different story. Nowhere, and I mean nowhere, Does it give her the right to edit, alter, or even influence the film's final cut? What she was given, however, was a vanity credit, an executive producer title purely for appearance, not power. It's written right there. In addition, the artist shall be accorded one executive producer credit in the first position of the main titles. No less favorable than any other executive producer credits. That's it. A name in the credits. Not authority. Not control. She was paid $1.75 million on a pay-to-play basis, meaning she got paid whether or not the movie was even released. On top of that, she could earn up to $1.2 million in bonuses, plus extra incentives if she got nominated for awards. The contract even covered her assistant, travel, and personal expenses. But when it came to actual creative decisions, she had none. Her agreement clearly outlines that all final calls, from production to post, rested solely with the company. Even her consultation rights were limited to things like wardrobe, hair, makeup, and her co-star selection. And when she did have input, the company had the final say every single time. Even her publicity was controlled. Under her contract, she wasn't allowed to issue any public statement or leak information to the press without the company's written approval. Any negative or derogatory mention of the company, its people, or the film was strictly forbidden. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Leaks to the press, unauthorized statements, and a public campaign that painted the production in a terrible light. Each of those, by the way, is a potential breach of contract. But the deeper you go, the worse it gets, because her contract doesn't just restrict her publicity. It also reveals how much control she gave away when it came to sex scenes, consent, and intimacy, and that's where things get explosive. Blake accused the director of crossing the line during intimate scenes. But here's the shocking truth: those very conversations were required by her own contract. In her lawsuit, Blake claimed that discussions about intimate scenes, including one specific birth scene, made her uncomfortable. She suggested those talks were inappropriate or unnecessary. But her own contract proves the exact opposite. It clearly states, no nudity, no simulated sex scene. Artists shall not appear nude or be required to film any scenes in the nude, or appear in any simulated sex scenes without obtaining the artist's prior written consent. Not only that, the company was forbidden from using a body double or digital simulation of Blake in any nude or sexual context without her written approval. Every decision about those scenes had to go through her first. That means Justin Baldoni, as the director, had to talk to her ahead of time. It was his legal obligation to discuss what would happen in any scene involving undress or intimacy. He couldn't skip that step, not if he wanted to stay compliant with her agreement. In other words, those uncomfortable conversations she later called harassment weren't inappropriate at all. They were mandatory. They were her idea. Her contract demanded they happen. And when you see how specific the language is, how it covers simulated sex, choreography, and even digital body usage, it's clear. She wanted full control over her image and representation. The production respected that. But that's not even the wildest part. Because when you dig deeper, you find out that Blake's lawsuit didn't just ignore these rules, it might have violated her own non-disclosure and morality clauses, too. And that's where her credibility completely falls apart. What if I told you Blake Lively wasn't just discouraged from talking, she was legally forbidden from saying a word about the film? Here's where the contract takes a darker turn. Tucked near the end of her agreement is a strict non-disclosure and confidentiality clause, the kind that locks everything down tight. It covers everything: scripts, storylines, character details, production schedules, even behind-the-scenes conversations. The language couldn't be clearer. Neither Blake nor her company, Blakeel Incorporated, could disclose, report, reveal, gossip, or speculate about any production information. That means no talking, no hinting, no posting, not even privately through text or email. The studio had the exclusive right to decide what information went public, when it went out, and who said it. If Blake wanted to do an interview, a social media post, or even mention the project casually, she had to get written permission first. And yet, leaks started happening, stories appeared in the press, narratives spread online, and her team reportedly shared inside details with tabloids. Each of those leaks? Direct violations of her NDA. It didn't stop there. Her contract also included a non-derogatory clause, meaning she was barred from making or encouraging any negative statements about the production, the director, or the company. Even gossip, even subtle shade could count as a breach. And then there's the morality clause, which is pretty standard in Hollywood, but here it's ironclad. It required her to maintain conduct that wouldn't cause public disrepute, scandal, or ridicule for the studio. If she was ever convicted of a moral offense or acted in a way that embarrassed the company, they could terminate her immediately. All of this paints a crystal clear picture. She had to stay silent, stay professional, and avoid controversy by her own agreement. But instead of silence, she went public, and now every word she spoke might be used against her. Because the final section of her contract doesn't just reveal what she couldn't say, it shows exactly how she broke it down to the smallest detail. After everything that's come out, the contracts, the clauses, the contradictions, one question remains: did Blake Lively destroy her own case? At this point, the picture is painfully clear. The very contract Blake's team tried to distance her from, the one she claimed wasn't valid, is the same one that binds her to every rule she's now accused of breaking. She agreed to arbitration, not lawsuits. She acknowledged the COVID protocols she said didn't exist. She had insurance protections she later denied. She signed off on a strict NDA, promised not to speak negatively about the production, and accepted millions under those exact terms. She even accepted full payment, which, in legal terms, means full acceptance of the contract. So whether or not she physically signed every page doesn't matter. She was paid. The film was completed. She benefited from the deal. That makes it binding. The contradictions don't stop there. Blake claimed she had creative control, editing rights, and producer authority. Yet her contract makes it clear she didn't. She had limited consultation rights, nothing more. She wasn't allowed to hire anyone, edit footage, or make production decisions without company approval. And when it came to the alleged harassment and misconduct claims, her own agreement required the exact conversations she's now using as evidence. It even spelled out that any disputes unrelated to sexual assault or harassment must be handled privately through arbitration, not a public lawsuit. So from a legal standpoint, her case isn't just weak, it's collapsing in on itself. Every claim she's made has a corresponding clause that contradicts it. And now that this contract is unsealed, it's not just the court that can see it, the public can too. So what happens next? That depends on how far she's willing to go, because if this case keeps unraveling, Blake Lively might not just lose in court, she could lose her credibility for good. When you strip away the headlines, the press statements, and the PR spin, all that's left is the truth written in her own words. Every accusation, every contradiction, every public claim, undone by the very contract she built it on. She wasn't silenced by Hollywood. She was silenced by her own signature. And now that this document is out, the court isn't the only one watching. The world is. Because the moment you sign your name in ink, you sign away the lies. This story isn't over, not by a long shot. But one thing's for sure. Blake Lively's biggest secret isn't what was done to her. It's what she agreed to do herself.